Hi everybody, licensed massage therapist Paul Kokity here. Have you ever wondered if there was some kind of underlying pattern to your body that fought you getting better, whether it was just for trying to improve your posture or your flexibility or really any kind of injury that you have going on? Have you undergone body work, whether it's massage, acupuncture, chiropractic, and you just felt like you kept reverting back to the same thing over and over again? Does it feel like there's something fighting your improvement? Now, it could be that it is a habitual issue. I like to pick on side sleeping and sitting rolled onto one hip. But, that's a whole different video for talking about that stuff. But, the truth is there actually is an underlying postural pattern that we all fight for trying to improve our alignment or recover from any type of injury. And that, from my training, I was taught to call it the core distortion. What is it? It's basically this underlying spiral that exists in the body. Now, in the physical therapy world, they like to call it anterior hip syndrome. Basically, that means one hip is tilted forward, the other one is tilted back. You might hear it referred to short leg syndrome, but that could actually suggest there's actually a leg length discrepancy here. Anterior hip syndrome would suggest that the problem more originates in the pelvis. So, that's a terminology that's often used in the physical therapy world and some of the massage and also chiropractic. Now, there's all sorts of theories out there, suggesting where this problem comes from. One of the common things I've heard is that they suggest it's leftover trauma from the birthing process. But the problem is with that argument is that even cesarean-born children have this twist going on in the body. Now, generally speaking, the physical therapy world will say that the right hip is tilted forward. I want to say it's something like they say 60% of hips, they have the right hip tilted forward, the left one tilted back. But from my training, it's almost all of us have a left hip tilted forward, right hip tilted back. And I'll get into explaining why in a moment. But the problem with assessing the hips, regardless, is that a lot of times they like to assess from the front of the pelvis, from these points here, abbreviated the ASIS points, or anterior superior iliac spine. The problem with this is that there's a number of ways that the front can be deceptive, because it may be from a twist, but also your hips can get jammed up or down, what's called an up slip, down slip, or one side can get tucked under, or both can get tucked under, or your sacrum can be tilted, or you can be super tight, crunched in one side, therefore driving one side up higher. So there's so many ways that the hips can be masked to show the pattern. I'm mostly talking about the underlying pattern that existed before everything else in life was piled up on top of it. If you want to think of it as an onion with what's going on in the core, within all the trauma, all the postural issues, all the injuries piled up on top of it, I'm talking about the underlying issue that all that secondary stuff accumulated in life fights against. So, all right, if it's not birthing trauma, what the heck is going on? Now, those various bodywork modalities, just theorize. I'm picking on all the bodywork modalities, whether it's massage therapists, chiropractic, physical therapy, personal training. They just theorize, and the reason why they have to theorize is because they're not well studied into developmental biology. But if they just actually studied how we form, the answer is given in developmental biology, particularly dealing with how our gut twists, how our small intestine and large intestine twist to allow 30 feet of GI tract to fit between your mouth and your anus. So basically, it happens well before we were born. For studying the gut rotation, there are what's considered 3 phases of gut rotation. The first two deal mostly with the small intestine. The third phase deals mostly with the large intestine or the colon. So, during the first, I believe, 9 to 10 weeks of development, it's all about the small intestine and how it twists and elongates, creates a flexion in the front of the torso, which basically helps feed your body being pulled into the fetal position. Basically, it causes the front of the trunk, including your hip flexors, to shorten, to contract. So in your pelvis, it causes your pelvis to tilt forward a little bit. Now, come roughly week 11, which is when I believe I studied that your large intestine then starts to twist. Up until that point, your large intestine, the colon, is mostly along the left side of your torso, what we later know of it as a descending colon. And then up at the top, there's a little J hook where the cecum and the appendix is, which that's the beginning of your large intestine, your colon. Well, roughly week 11 for the third phase of gut rotation, all of a sudden it starts to elongate and twist and drop down to the lower right quadrant over your right hip bone. So that's considered a counter rotation to what just happened with your small intestine. So if your small intestine causes your left hip, your hips to tilt forward, then the colon, creating a counter rotation in dropping down to the lower right hip, causes a right hip to tilt backward. In baseball, or for baseball, if you think of like catching a ball with a mitt, how your mitt snaps backward as you catch the ball, it's the same thing here, except for it's your right hip bone being tilted backward. So like I said, this gets established roughly week 11 in development. So that's the source of this underlying spiral. And the thing is to understand that your intestines continue to twist and elongate roughly till puberty, if I remember reading that correctly. It's easy to understand that with all that twisting, elongating, convoluting, how our core can get distorted. Now, everything that's going on down in our pelvis also twists and spirals up through our upper body. If you haven't watched my cranial or pelvic videos, please do. It gets a little bit more thorough for talking about some of this stuff and what I call the marionette effect. Basically, think of the sticks of the marionette affecting the body of the marionette. The bones in the skull have an impact down into the pelvis, but also what's going on in your pelvis has an impact back up into the skull. Now, everything up here relates to what's going on down here. How I said the left hip is tilted forward, the right hip is tilted back. Guess what? The left side of your skull is tilted and compressed into your face a little bit, and then the right side of your skull is tilted back, compressing the back suboccipital area. Easy way to tell that, if you just feel along the base of your skull, for the vast majority of us, you will feel extra massive tissue along the right side here. That's your skull being tilted back, and then how basically through your whole life your tissue holds a little extra compression, a little extra muscle tone, all through this right side. So this is what's going on in the skull for the core distortion. And then if you think about how you walk, how your arms and legs swing opposite of each other, how the left hip is tilted forward, the right shoulder is trying to come across through the body in the form of an internal rotation in the right rotator cuff. So if you start looking at people, the vast majority of us, you will see this extra internal rotation going on here in the right shoulder, and how the whole right shoulder gets pulled over diagonally into this rotator cuff. This rotator cuff, this internal rotation, leads the strain going on in the right shoulder. On the left side, there's just more of this straight up knot in the top of the shoulder. If you feel the traps, it's this extra bunching here for the vast majority of us, whereas this side, it's a diagonal pull. This is an underlying pattern to the shoulder that really feeds so much of upper body stuff going on. Now throw in a right-handed world with this internal rotation in this right shoulder, we get a heck of a lot of strain going down our right arms. So, this is the pattern, the spiral that we all fight. The twisting in the hips, the imbalance in the shoulders, the twisting of the skull. In the skull, it can help feed any number of issues like TMJ problems. But anyway, this is the spiral. Once you recognize it, it really takes so much mystery out of the body. Now, I happen to find a particular modality called structural energetic therapy that introduced me to this spiral and taught me some amazing craniosacral techniques for helping to release this stuck static pattern from the body. And it's proven when you do the right cranial techniques in the right way, it unlocks this spiraling pattern to take you from the stuck static pattern to something more dynamic that we can create change with. The way to think of it, the onion with the layers built up over your life, if you knock out that core of the onion, then all those layers surrounding it lose their foundation and start to unravel, and we can see those layers in their pure form to see what's going on in them and address them easier. So anytime anyone comes to me, whether it's just trying to relax, to have less tension in their body, to trying to deal with posture issues or deal with any kind of injuries, I always like to go in and knock out the core distortion first, because it just makes everything so much more effective. It's a big component to how I have scoliosis clients that I have completely straightened out. With scoliosis, it's really just an overemphasized version of the core distortion, because that pattern pretty much is there. Now, this pattern exists for the vast majority of us. Only 1 out of 500 people, statistically speaking, have an opposite twist to their colon. And so far, from the people I've worked with, that roughly is a correct estimate. This is a video for the scientific part of it with these models. The next video to come, I actually have a model who's volunteered to stand up in front of this chart over here and let me show you what the pattern is. I've already filmed it, so I show what the pattern is. I take her through the core distortion release, and then we can see the changes afterwards. And it's pretty cool, even in video. There's enough of a core distortion that's released to be able to show you the changes that happen to the hips, and you can even see how her torso is better supported from the craniosacral protocol. And the great thing about that protocol, it is pretty much a once-in-a-lifetime release for creating change. It is that awesome. So if you've enjoyed this video, please like me if you found me on YouTube. If you want to stay up to date on the more videos to come regarding this and other subjects, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you found this through my website, just browse the website and you will be able to find more videos posted on the pages for the related subjects. So, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for tuning in. Until the next video, be well and be groovy. Bye.